On 6 July 1945, the sun rose over Europe, still scarred by war, as an uneasy silence replaced the thunder of gunfire. Inside a quiet tent near Frankfurt, 20-year-old Audie Murphy sat alone, helmet in hand, staring at a letter from home. He had survived Sicily, Salerno, and the frozen forests of the Ardennes. Yet peace now brought heavier questions. Across the Atlantic, millions of young Americans waited for orders, wondering if the war was truly over. Victory in Europe had been declared weeks earlier, but the world still trembled under unfinished violence. Murphy knew that his generation was being asked to decide, not in classrooms, but in trenches, what kind of future would exist. Each letter from home carried relief, guilt, and fear, reminding him how small one life felt. This moment, balance between survival and sacrifice, defined thousands of unseen American stories. As summer stretched on, the choices facing young Americans would grow darker, and history waited. In Washington, D.C., President Harry Truman studied maps late into the night, carrying the weight of millions. Most soldiers would never know his deliberations, yet their lives hung on decisions made far away. Back in Germany, Murphy folded the letter carefully and prepared to follow orders once again. He was decorated as a hero, yet he felt like a boy, still learning the cost of duty. All around him, other young men wrestled with fear, hope, and exhaustion in equal measure. They had crossed oceans, left childhood behind, and stepped into a world reshaped by fire. The war asked questions no training could answer and demanded choices no youth should face. This is where our story begins, not with battles alone, but with decisions made in silence. Because long after the guns fell quiet, these choices would echo across generations. For young Americans like Audie Murphy, the end of war was only the beginning. By 14 July 1945, troop ships shifted course quietly, carrying men toward a war not yet finished. In San Francisco Bay, Private First Class Kenji Nakamura watched the shoreline fade, his hands trembling slightly. He was 21, American-born, wearing U.S. Army green, while his parents remained behind barbed wire memories. The war in Europe was over, but the Pacific demanded more blood, more youth, more impossible resolve. Orders came sealed and brief. Destination Okinawa. Expectation uncertain. Survival never promised. Kenji thought of his father's grocery store, shuddered after Pearl Harbor, and the silence that followed. Now he sailed east toward Japan, asked to fight a nation that shared his face, but not his allegiance. Around him, other young Americans played cards and laughed loudly, hiding fear behind forced bravado. They had seen photographs of Iwo Jima, charred sand, lifeless bodies, courage paid in full. Commanders spoke of honor and necessity, but whispers below deck spoke of odds and death. Every mile across the Pacific tightened the knot in Kenji's chest, pulling him toward fate. Back home, newspapers celebrated victory, yet mothers sensed the war was unfinished. In Washington, planners debated invasion timelines, casualty estimates climbing into the hundreds of thousands. Each calculation meant sons, brothers, and friends measured against strategic necessity. Kenji pressed his dog tags together, whispering a promise to survive, to return changed, but alive. He wondered if America would ever fully claim him after what it had already taken. As the ship cut through dark water, the future felt distant, fragile, and unforgiving. The war no longer felt heroic. It felt personal, relentless, and closing in fast. 4 young Americans crossing the Pacific, choice vanished, replaced by duty alone. Ahead waited Japan, and decisions that would redefine the modern world. On 26 July 1945, the Potsdam Declaration was issued quietly, while soldiers remained unaware. At Camp Pendleton, 19-year-old Marine Daniel Rodriguez cleaned his rifle under a fading California sky. He had enlisted after high school, chasing purpose, now trapped inside relentless anticipation. Training drills intensified daily, rumors of a mainland invasion spreading like wildfire. Officers avoided questions, eyes heavy with knowledge, voices tight with restraint. Daniel wrote letters to his mother, careful not to reveal fear or doubt. He told her the food was fine, the weather mild, the men confident. In truth, casualty estimates whispered through the barracks, spoke of death on an unimaginable scale. Intelligence briefings described Japan as unyielding, prepared to fight until annihilation. Young Marines studied maps of Kyushu, tracing beaches, imagining blood-soaked sand. Each night, Daniel lay awake, listening to distant waves, wondering if fate was sealed. He believed in his country, yet questioned what survival would require. Across the ocean, civilians starved, cities burned, and leaders hardened their resolve. The declaration demanded surrender, offering peace, but carried unspoken threats. Few soldiers knew its words, fewer still grasped their consequences. Daniel's world shrank to his pack, his rifle, his thoughts. He imagined stepping onto hostile shore, surrounded by fire, choice stripped away. War had taught him obedience, not understanding, endurance over reflection. As July ended, tension thickened, time stretched, and decisions approached unseen. History moved forward quietly, while young Americans waited, unknowingly balanced on the edge. On 6 August 1945, dawn broke over Tinian Island, calm and deceptively ordinary. Airman First Class Thomas Farabee adjusted his headset inside the Enola Gay, breathing steadily. He was 25, a bombardier trained for precision, carrying a weight no training could prepare him for. The mission briefing had been brief, clinical, stripped of emotion and consequence. Below them, the Pacific glimmered, indifferent to what was coming. Thomas thought of his hometown in North Carolina, of church bells and summer heat. At 8:15 a.m., Hiroshima vanished beneath blinding light, time itself rupturing. The aircraft rocked. Shockwaves followed, silence filling the cockpit. No one spoke, because words felt useless, inadequate, dangerous. Thomas stared through the glass, seeing a city dissolve into smoke and fire. He understood, instantly, that survival for some meant annihilation for others. Back on the ground, tens of thousands ceased to exist in a single breath. In American camps, soldiers felt nothing yet. Only rumors, fragments, disbelief. Leaders framed it as necessity, as mercy through devastation. For the young men who would never land on Japan's shores, relief crept in slowly. For Thomas, relief tangled with horror, guilt threading through duty. The war had crossed a threshold, one humanity could never retreat from. The sky over Hiroshima darkened, while the world unknowingly changed forever. For young Americans, the impossible choice had been answered at an unbearable cost. On 9 August 1945, heavy clouds hung over Nagasaki, masking fate until the final seconds. Major Charles Sweeney gripped the controls of Boxcar, fighting weather, fuel, and doubt. He was 33, older than most, yet burdened by the same uncertainty. The primary target vanished beneath clouds, forcing a decision made in minutes, not years. Below, factories, homes, and lives waited, unaware of their selection. At 11:02 a.m., the bomb fell, history repeating with brutal efficiency. The explosion bloomed violently, echoing Hiroshima's devastation, sealing Japan's fate. In distant camps, American soldiers heard whispers, sensed the end approaching. Some celebrated quietly. Others felt uneasy, unable to name why. Private Daniel Rodriguez stared at the sky, realizing he might never see Kyushu. Relief arrived tangled with guilt, survival bought with unseen suffering. In Washington, calculations ceased. Invasion plans folded away. Casualty projections dissolved, replaced by stunned silence. For policymakers, the war's end was strategic, measured, justified. For young Americans, it was personal, sudden, disorienting. They had trained to kill, to die. Now they were asked to live instead. The enemy had surrendered in fragments, pride breaking slowly. Across Japan, cities smoldered, families mourned, a nation shattered. The war had ended not with victory parades, but with shadows. For those spared the beaches, gratitude mixed with sorrow, shaping memory forever. On 15 August 1945, radios crackled across the world, carrying the Emperor's voice. In a muddy camp outside Manila, Corporal James Miller froze, helmet in his hands. He was 22, exhausted beyond measure, listening as Japan surrendered at last. Around him, men cheered, cried, laughed, all at once. James felt numb, suspended between survival and loss. He thought of friends buried on distant islands, victories they would never see. The war was over, officially, yet nothing felt finished. Orders came slowly, stand down, wait, prepare to go home. For months, life had been reduced to commands. Now silence filled the gaps. James wondered who he would be without a rifle. Across the Pacific, prisoners emerged from camps, skeletal, blinking at sunlight. Young Americans confronted what the war had revealed and taken. Some felt pride, others shame. Most felt confusion. The emperor's words spoke of endurance, not apology, deepening unease. Back home, families celebrated, unaware of what waited inside returning sons. James wrote a final letter, saying he was safe, saying little else. The war had shaped him, carved him, and left no instructions for peace. Victory felt fragile, heavy, and strangely hollow. The choices made far away had spared his life, but changed his soul. For young Americans, survival was only the first step toward reckoning. On 2 September 1945, steel decks gleamed aboard the USS Missouri, anchored in Tokyo Bay. Seaman First Class Robert Hayes stood at attention, sweat running beneath his uniform. He was 19, barely removed from boyhood, witnessing history from the edge. Japanese officials signed documents slowly, each pen stroke heavy with consequence. Cameras clicked. Flags snapped in the wind, ceremony masking devastation beyond the bay. Robert watched silently, aware that millions were absent from this moment. The war officially ended here, but its cost lingered in every breath. He thought of classmates who never returned, names carved into hometown stone. Around him, officers spoke formally, restraint shaping every gesture. There was no cheering, only acknowledgement, restraint born of shared exhaustion. Robert felt pride swell, then falter, replaced by reflection. Victory had come through destruction unimaginable months earlier. Across Japan, cities lay flattened, families displaced, futures uncertain. American sailors would soon walk occupied streets, strangers in a broken land. Robert wondered how peace could grow from ashes. The documents were signed, the ceremony concluded. History moved forward. Men were dismissed, routines resumed, the extraordinary absorbed into duty. For Robert, the moment felt incomplete, like an ending without closure. The war was over on paper, but not in memory. Young Americans would carry this day forever, etched quietly inside. By 10 September 1945, troop trains rolled across a quiet America, carrying men homeward. Sergeant William Carter stared through a window, watching cornfields blur into memory. He was 24, older than when he left, unsure how to explain the change. Crowds gathered at stations, waving flags, cheering faces glowing with relief. William smiled politely, feeling distant from celebration. His war existed in fragments, sudden noise, sharp loss, long nights. At home, his mother hugged him tightly, whispering gratitude over his shoulder. Neighbors asked questions, eager for stories, hungry for meaning. William answered carefully, trimming truth to protect them and himself. Sleep came poorly. Dreams crowded with echoes he could not silence. Across the nation, young Americans struggled quietly. Victory offering no instruction manual. Schools reopened, factories shifted, life rushed forward impatiently. Yet inside returning soldiers, time stalled, trapped between before and after. The war had demanded everything, now asked them to forget. Some found solace in routine. Others drifted, unseen and unheard. William enrolled in college under the GI Bill, seeking direction. He sat in classrooms beside teenagers, feeling like a visitor. The choices made overseas followed him home, shaping every thought. Peace was real, but it felt unfamiliar, fragile, unfinished. For young Americans, the battle now turned inward, where no medals were awarded. On 12 October 1945, autumn settled gently over small towns across America. In Ohio, former Lieutenant Samuel Brooks stood outside a factory gate, waiting for an interview. He was 26, shoulders squared, resume thin, confidence uneven. The war had taught him leadership under fire, but not how to explain it politely. Inside, machines hummed steadily, indifferent to where he had been. Samuel remembered commanding men in chaos, decisions made in seconds. Now he rehearsed answers, struggling to translate survival into employment. Many veterans faced the same quiet test, purpose replaced by paperwork. Communities welcomed them home, yet rarely understood what they carried. Parades faded. Uniforms were folded away. Expectation turned practical. Samuel found work eventually, routine steady but uninspiring. At night, newsreels played overseas reconstruction, Europe rising slowly. The world moved on, shaped by decisions made during their youth. For Samuel, meaning felt deferred, postponed until further notice. He attended veterans' meetings, where silence spoke louder than words. Shared glances carried recognition, relief in being understood. The war had ended, but its imprint guided every choice afterward. Young Americans learned that survival did not equal resolution. History remembered battles and dates, rarely the quiet aftermath. For those who lived it, the hardest choices came after the guns fell silent. By December 1945, winter wrapped the nation in quiet reflection. In a modest Texas home, Audie Murphy sat by a dim Christmas tree, restless and withdrawn. He was 21, celebrated publicly, haunted privately, caught between worlds. Newspapers called him a hero. Neighbors asked for smiles and speeches. Inside, memories surfaced uninvited, carrying weight no decoration could hide. Audie thought of boys who never came home, faces frozen in time. The war had ended, yet its noise echoed relentlessly in his mind. America looked ahead with optimism, building highways, families, futures. Young veterans tried to fit into that vision, often forcing themselves smaller. Audie turned to writing, to film, searching for language strong enough to hold truth. His struggle mirrored thousands, unseen battles fought in silence. The choices of youth had shaped the modern world and fractured its survivors. History would remember victory, power, decisive action. It would rarely linger on the cost paid by those who carried it forward. For young Americans, impossible choices had come early and left late. They had stood at crossroads no generation should face. The war defined them, but did not finish them. Their lives continued, shaped by sacrifice, resilience, and unanswered questions.